Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Shivam Codes. Today in the playlist Basics of Linux, I'll be covering up process management in Linux. Now to jump into process management, first you need to understand what a process is. So what is a process? A program in execution acting as an active entity rather than a passive stored file. So here you can see that we have a C++ program that prints hello world in the screen. You don't have to worry about uh, how C++ works if you don't understand what it is. At the moment, just think of this as a program, a piece of code. Now, when this piece of code or program is loaded in memory and executing, then at that time, it becomes a process. So a program is a piece of code which is just stored in your system. But when you load that piece of code into the memory, that is your random access memory or your RAM, and it is executing, actively executing, then it becomes a process. Now, how is a process created? Let's jump into the terminal to understand this. So this is my terminal, which was shown earlier. So in that example, I had shown a bash, but here I have a ZSH terminal. How you can see that is just do echo and $0. This will tell you your terminal, what kind of terminal you have. So I have a ZSH. You can have bash or any other shell. So here in my terminal, this terminal is itself a process which is running. And when I execute any other command, let's say ls, then this terminal, which is a process, it spins up a child process, and that child process then executes the ls command and the output is printed on the screen. So my terminal becomes a parent process and it creates a child process which executes the ls command, and then child process is killed and we have the control back to the parent process, that is my terminal. So what we discussed is that my bash or ZSH shell was initially a process, but when I executed something which is ls command, then my bash became the parent process, the terminal became the parent process, and it spawned a child process and that executed the ls command. So that is how processes are created. And how exactly this happens is via some system commands, which are fork and exec. So if you want to understand what fork is and what exec is, all these commands, these are something very fundamental to operating systems. If you want to understand, you can drop a comment, as it is not much relevant to how Linux works and process management, hence I'm not covering it here. There are some ways where we can see what all processes we are running on our system. One of which is PS command, which basically stands for process status. PS command reports a snapshot of the current process. Remember, PS gives you a static view of the current processes. Let's see this in terminal. So here, if I type PS and I press enter, I can see that there is some PID shown 22172. This is PID basically means the process ID, and this process ID is basically of the current terminal that is running. So the current terminal has got some ID, which is 227172 in my case. For you, it could be different. If I close this terminal and again try to execute this PS command, I'll get some different ID, because usually different IDs are allocated to processes. So let's explore the man page for this PS command. So as we can see that it offers various flags here. If you just want to display the process belonging to a specified usernames, you can use the -u flag. So next is the top command, which stands for table of processes. It displays the Linux processes, and this top command is dynamic in nature. I'll show this to you in the terminal. So here, if I type top and press enter, then you will see that I have a nice dashboard opened and it is updating dynamically. Every second it updates, which shows a lot of information here. The processes, which is 727, it gives us information about the PID, which is the process ID. So every process gets something known as process ID. So it is mentioned in this column. Then how much CPU it is consuming. So here for me, OBS, which I'm using to record this video, is consuming the most amount of CPU. And there are a lot more things, ports, how much memory consuming, and there's also something known as state. So this is basically relevant for operating systems, but I'll just give you an overview of what this is. So running means the process is actively running at the moment. There's something known as stuck, something known as sleeping. So process do sleep, process can be stuck. And there's also something known as PPID. So every process has a process ID, and every process also has something known as PPID, which is parent process ID. So earlier I mentioned that a process is created by some parent process. So if let's say I create a new process, then that process is mapped to its parent via this parent process ID. So you can see here that a lot of process were spawned by the process which was having the process ID of 1. So there is one more interactive way of seeing the processes, which is more human friendly. That is basically the htop command, which is bit human friendly. Not usually there in your system, you have to install it. So in macOS, I installed the htop using the brew install htop command. In Ubuntu distribution, you can use apt install htop, or if you're using Arch, you can use your package manager and you can just Google it how to install htop. It's mostly there in all the distributions of Linux. So here we can see that how much memory it is visually showing how much memory is used. So my system has 16 gigs of RAM, almost 10 and a half is being used at the moment. And here also so top and htop are basically the same thing. It's just that htop is more human readable and human friendly. Here it shows the PID, which is the process ID in this column. Then we have the user, so who is running the process. Then where is the P parent process ID? Okay, this doesn't show the parent process ID, I guess, but you can do a lot here. So at the very bottom, you can see that there's something known as kill, and we can search. So we can search using the F3. So let's search for Chrome. I think it's open. So yeah, this process is running Chrome. And if I want to kill a process, we can kill from the htop. If I just navigate to that process and I press F9, so then that will kill the process. There's one more way to kill a process, which is using the kill command. So let's explore the man page for it. So kill is used to terminate or signal a process. So kill is a command which will signal something to a process. Now there is a flag. Yeah, this flag 9. So if we use this 9 flag, which basically means kill, and it is non-ignorable kill. So if we use this flag, the process will be killed no matter what. So let's say the current terminal is running on this process 22172. If I want to kill it, I can just type kill -9, which was for non-ignorable kill. And I just type in the process ID of this process, which I want to kill, which is 22172. Now, if I press enter, this terminal will close. I don't want to do that, but you can try it out. There are multiple such flags which you can see for the kill command using the -L flag. So here it was the kill. I think it's probably ninth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9. A total, I don't know how many are there, but the every one of these are for some special purposes. So yeah. So one is for hang up. So if you want to give an interrupt to a process, which is something related to operating systems. So an interrupt is basically you are trying to signal a process that, hey, something has happened. You might be interested into this. So let's say a human being just tap on your shoulders while you're reading a book, and it's up to you to look into it or ignore it at the moment. So if you're doing something very interesting, you might want to do something and get back to it later. So that's just an interrupt. You're interrupting it to let it know that, hey, something has happened. There's something known as quit, abort, kill is the one mostly used. Next thing is background versus foreground processes. So what are background processes and what are foreground processes? At the very moment, whatever command I have executed in the terminal are foreground processes, which are running in the foreground. You can see the result immediately. I'll show you this in terminal. So here, if I type ls, the command gives some output, which is given to me in the terminal immediately. So I'll execute one command, which is sleep, and I'll give 5. So what this command will do is it'll make this process sleep. So what I mean here by process is my terminal. So my terminal will sleep for 5 seconds. And as you can see, I don't have the option to type any more commands. And after 5 seconds, I have it back. So this was a foreground process, a process that actively runs in the foreground. If I type this command again using the ampersand symbol, then this command will be run in the background by some other process without interrupting what I was doing here. So I can execute more commands here, but that sleep command is executing in the background. And right now it got completed. So I was prompted back that, hey, this command was completed. So let's sleep the process for 10 seconds in the background. And there is a simple way to figure out how many background processes you have currently running, which is using the jobs command. So this jobs command shows, okay, there is one sleep command, which is actively running in the background, and it will be executed after 10 seconds from the start of its execution time. And I was also prompted that, hey, this sleep command has executed in the background. If I type jobs now, there's nothing there. So jobs is basically a command in Linux, which will basically give you information about background processes that are running. So yeah, that is it for the video. If you have any questions, you can put them down in the comment. If you want anything specific to cover in this playlist, I'll be happy to do that. Make sure to comment them. And if you like my videos, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.